Hello, welcome. It's Mary. If it's your first time at my channel, I'm so happy to see you. Now, I'm going to talk today about, Gen X. Okay, I am a member of Gen X. I'm one of the elder members, being in my later 50s. I don't want to say late 50s, but later 50s. And what brought this up, I think, partially was because someone not too long ago had said something like, I wonder why Gen X is the way they are. I mean, what makes Gen X the way they are? And of course, I'm thinking, what do you mean the way we are? And then I, of course, had to think about it and figure out something that I could probably use in the video because I think this is kind of an interesting topic. It's one of my favorite things. I'm very proud, kind of member of Gen X. So, hey, so what I'd like to do today is to dive into how many of us grew up, in Gen X and some of the commonalities that we've all had. And for the most part, there's always going to be outliers. And I have a few notes because I wanted to make sure I didn't leave anything important out of this one. Remember, I'm still getting, I'm new at this. I'm still getting used to everything. So I appreciate your patience. But anyway, I want to dive into like our combined, kind of common Gen X experiences. And for some reason, people seem to think that we're hard and, that we maybe don't show our emotions very well sometimes or connect emotionally or whatever terminology they might use at the moment. So we grew up with boomer parents sometimes, but some of us, again, elder Gen X, we had, for example, perhaps silent Gen. There's quite a bit of silent Gen raised Gen X, but there's also a lot of us that had a greatest generation parent as well. My dad was greatest Gen, my mom was silent Gen, okay? Which means my dad grew up during the Great Depression and went through World War II as an infantryman and a medic. And my mom grew up during the Great Depression. She was about 12 years younger than him when they got married. So I, think that what I've noticed about that, and I noticed the kind of commonality of our experiences, is that our parents never encouraged us to talk about how we felt or to get in touch with your emotions. It sounds like some kind of hippy, drippy kind of nonsense, to me. See, that's me, that's my dad, mom coming out in me. But it sounds like some kind of nonsense that maybe the boomers would have embraced a little bit more, maybe with their kids. But boomers have the reputation for being very self-involved, whether it's, entirely true or not. But now the older ones, for sure, Gen X, silent Gen, just speaking from my experience, it wasn't so much that they didn't care about us. They loved us. But for one thing, I was an accident. My oldest brother loves to tell me that to this day. And, that's always fun to hear. But I came along when my parents were older. My dad was almost 50 and my mom was close to 40. So, I have a brother who is, if he was a young dad, he could have been my dad. He's 17 years older than me. And his oldest son is only 4 years younger than me. So we just weren't raised the same way that kids today, a lot of times are raised, for good and for bad, right? So the whole thing about the parents is they believed, I think, truly, that if they fed you, they kept a roof over your head, clothed you, and everything like that, then they were doing their job. Okay, my dad worked a lot. My dad worked his butt off. According to my oldest brother, for sure, we talked about this recently. My dad, like before I was born, my dad would he was a teacher, and then he became a middle school principal in his later years. But my brother said that during the summers, my dad would go off, to another town most of the week, if not all of the week, and work as a carpenter. That was his trade before he, got his well, I guess his degrees in college. So he would go and work manual labor during the summertime. And the thing is, my dad, I've mentioned this before on the channel if you've watched another one of my videos and it came up, but my dad said, I would shovel shit in order to feed my family if I had to. And I truly believe that. That was a hardworking man. You could not keep him in the house. He was always outdoors. He mowed the yard until he was 85, and he had colon cancer that had spread all through his body and didn't know it at that time. But I remember my mom saying that she knew something was wrong when he had to quit mowing. Keep in mind he was 85. Okay, he had to quit mowing because he said he just couldn't do it that day. So, I mean, now that generation, the greatest gen and the silent gen, those people are tough. My dad never complained about depression. He said he'd go out, and go fishing and go do some stuff outside and, do some manual labor. But he's like, we didn't have time to worry about things like depression. We were too busy worrying about, all of the things that they legitimately had to worry about. Okay. So anyway, I have a lot of great stories from my parents. But the thing is, they didn't put a value on teaching the children to express ourselves in terms of our emotions. And when you hear from people, that grew up in my generation, you're not going to hear that we sat down and had heart-to-heart talks with our parents about, this or that, or, oh, I really like this boy and I don't think he likes me, or this or that or the other. That wasn't really a thing. What I think they were trying to do, and I think most of us would agree, is they wanted us to be tough. And they were tough, toughened up by circumstances. And so when we hear things, like their hardships that they went through, it kind of always made me think like, wow, dang, at least I've got whatever, right? And I know that they had a lot of financial problems. As an adult now, I can tell they had a lot of financial problems. That was in the 80s. And we all know, the 80s economy is, when we were talking about the Great Recession, we talk about other stuff, they'd say, well, it's the worst economy since the 1980s, blah, 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 whatever, some of the things that happened then. And I think back and I'm like, I don't know how we ever had food back then. I don't know how they could afford to feed any of us at all. But suck it up, buttercup, and walk it off, or whatever. Stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. All that stuff is real. That's all stuff that we heard for the most part. Probably we all had the same parents in that sense to some degree. But, things like it was harder in my day and blah, blah, blah. The old walking uphill to school both directions in the snow. I never really heard that one except as a joke. But still, we have a lot of common chastisements, I think, that my generation got from our parents who were very well-meaning, I think. Again, I think they loved us. I know my dad loved me. I know my mom loved me, even though she was very, very emotionally detached as well, and very much had her own kind of issues and struggles that, that I seem to have inherited, like anxiety and depression, that she would have never recognized as either of those. But they loved us, and I miss my parents, honest to goodness, every day. They passed away, and, my mom in 2018, my dad way back in 2003. And we, though, have, many of us, been raised to deal with our feelings ourselves, or to, just not deal with them at all. And That's pretty common. Now, I remember trying to talk to my mom as an adult about some things, and she never got it. And a lot of my, a lot of people my age, a lot of my, cohorts in Gen X, we've had some rough relationships in our time because we weren't taught how to have that type of relationship where you could be open and honest with a partner. Both of my long-term relationships, one lasting about 10 years, the other about 13, they left, and one of them, they were both technically Gen X, but I guess maybe none of us could communicate very well. Either couple that I was a part of, for a long time. But as we were left alone as kids, we were left alone to figure out how to cope, how to sort out these feelings. And in my 50s, after years of therapy, I'm still not sure what one of my exes, no, both of my exes, in one form or another, said that they just couldn't emotionally connect with me. And I remember being, they may not have used the same words exactly, but the same exact idea. And I still have a really hard time after years of therapy understanding what in the world do you mean by emotionally connect. Therapy's helped in a lot of ways because I feel like I've grown a lot emotionally, but I'm not sure I even in my 50s now. I think it's probably safer for me and for everybody else that might be involved at some point for me to stay single because I'm nowhere near where I think I should be to be able to be in another relationship. Now, why would I bring this up? Well, because I'm raising a Generation Z fine young man. And one thing that I think maybe I go overboard with sometimes is trying to overcorrect, you know, and I'll ask him far too often how he feels. I'll ask him if he's okay. You want to talk about it. You need some help. And I know the other day he said something like, well, you don't have to ask me that. I'll tell you if I feel whatever. He's a young man, and I think maybe that plays a part of it too, because I only have the one son, the one child, and it's a young man. So I wonder, though. I wonder. I've already encouraged him his entire life to share his feelings, but I'm not sure that I've been able to be enough of a role model as hard as I've tried to get him to that point. So that's something that I'm working on. Now, I have a plan to make the next video and post the next video. Like for you to check it out, because the next one that I'm going to go into, it's going to be more detail about that, because it's about Gen X raising Gen Z, because there's quite a few of us that are raising Gen Z kids. Those are the ones that were born from 1997 roughly to 2007. And my son is right there on the very end, 2007. So I'd like to find ways and to give you some tips as to how to bridge some of the gaps that we have as Gen X trying to deal with this very different generation, and how we cannot, or maybe learn not to overwhelm them by asking them the things that we wish our parents had said. Because I told him that point blank one day. I was like, look, man, my parents never asked me, how you doing? How you want to talk about this or whatever. I said, that's not the way it was back then. And I said, that's why I ask you. And, he's just like, yeah, I know. Yeah, you don't have to, and all that. But I want to, I'm doing some more research on some things and using some of the things that I've experienced in the past 17 years raising him. And, hopefully you'll stick around, subscribe, like this video, but watch that next one as well, because this is going to be a continuing thing too that I'm going to talk about. Thank you. All right. Bye.